Hello, everyone. So we'll get started. And I'm Shi-Hong Lin, and Professor Chair and Chair of Statistics Department, and also Professor of Biostatistics at Harvard University. And so it's my privilege to introduce Terence Tao, and who is a field medalist and distinguished professor, and James Carroll Collins Chair in Mathematics at UCLA. And Professor Tao is celebrated for the breadth and the depth is his mathematical contribution, spanning from partial differential equation, harmonic analysis, and the number theory, combination, and statistics and data science. Among his many contributions, the Green-Tao theory showed the prime number contains arithmetic progression of any finite number, and also his work related to compression sensing has helped connect deep mathematics and to modern signal and imaging reconstruction. He has received many honors, and his honors include the Field Medals and the MacArthur Fellowship and the Breakthrough Prize in Mathematics, Royal Medals, and also the Princess of Australia Award for Technical and Scientific Research. And he is an elected member of the National Academy of Science and also American Academy of Art and Sciences and Australia Academy of Sciences. And so Professor Tao has also been recently deeply engaged and within the emerging role of AI and mathematics. And so by using AI as transformative tools and also with a human guidance. So he has exerted a lot of interest right now in using AI for mathematical proof, and he's a leader of the equation theory project and also the leader of the polymath, and by solving the long-standing math problem by leveraging AI. And the moderating today's conversation is Professor Kan Ono, and he is a Commonwealth Professor of Mathematics at University of Virginia and founding mathematician as MC Math. And so he is a distinguished number theorist, and he is well known for his work in integer partitions and also his work in the recent I'm seeing math has focused on the intersection of math and AIs. And he has received numerous honors, including the Presidential Early Career Award for Scientists and Engineering. And also he's the elected fellows of American Mathematical Society and the AAAS. So please join me in welcoming Professor Tao and Professor Arnold.
Oh boy. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh my gosh, the clock has started. We have to start, Terry. So it's a great honor to be here, Terry. So let's just get started because we've read and heard your bio, which is probably only 10% of your bio. It's really quite impressive. But I want to start in a different way. So you're called the Mozart of math. So let's get that out of the way. And you're one of the most influential voices in the world of AI, which is a title I don't think you expected to ever have. And I want to thank you for the mathematicians of the world for taking that on. So researchers, policymakers, parents, educators, and students, and there are a lot of students here, everyone is listening. They're seeking both guidance and inspiration. So I want to make it pretty sobering and to reflect the moment. So to frame the conversation with all of this in mind, I want to go way back in time. I first met you in the mid-1990s in Princeton when you were a graduate student and I was a postdoc at the Institute for Advanced Study. Neither of us could have ever imagined what would transpire over the next 30 years. Now, I knew your advisor. He was a jovial man, Elias Stein. He was a great analyst, a number theorist. And I'll tell you, the first thing he said to me about you that I'll never forget is that he was worried about you and that you were really good at playing video games. What was the game?
Yes. So Princeton is where I discovered the internet, which was a bad thing. Although the game I played, it was called Civilization. and maybe it still exists. I think it's on version 6 or 7 now. It is quite a dangerous game if you have a certain obsessive mindset, because the game he plays for hours, and you can always just play one more turn, and
Some sleepless nights?
yeah, I
Okay.
spent.
Or maybe we should move on then.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can. All the time will vanish. Now, this is a famous story. After your oral exams, he sat down with you, and he said he was disappointed. And for the audience, it might be hard to imagine that there would ever be someone, or ever a time where someone would be disappointed in your mathematical performance. Tell us that story. I think it's important for students to hear.
Right. So when I was in my early education, I skipped a lot of grades, and I was very quick, and I could pass exams by just studying for like a week or something, and I didn't really have good study habits. Didn't take notes, or the notes were very, very sketchy during the class, and it kind of worked. I mean, my grades slowly deteriorated as I advanced, but I took a lot of classes and passed them. I failed 2 classes actually, but that's another story. So in Princeton, in graduate school, there's this, of mathematics, there's this major exam called the qualifying exam. So it's 3 hours, oral exam. You have 3 senior professors quiz you on different areas of mathematics. If you answer a question too easily, they give you a harder question. If you struggle, they give you an easier question. So most of my fellow students had prepared for months. They give each other mock exams. They read textbooks cover to cover. I spent like 2 or 3 weeks maybe preparing for this exam.
And it showed?
Yeah. So when I took in my chosen subject, harmonic analysis, I could not answer the first 2 questions, and then they asked me easier ones, and I couldn't answer those ones either, or I gave very, very incomplete answers. The only reason I passed was because I chose another subject to be quizzed on, analytic number theory. But and that one I did study for, because I was not as prepared. It was not my specialty at the time. But the professor who was supposed to quiz me on that, Zivotnik, you probably know him, he misunderstood and thought I was being quizzed on a different topic, algebraic number theory. So he prepared all these tricky questions in algebraic number theory, which were not appropriate. And so during the exam, he could only give me very textbole softball questions, prove the prime number theorem, this sort of thing. That I could do.
So what did you learn from this experience?
Yeah, so, well, it was a shock. I mean, it was the first time I had nearly failed an exam that I really thought I could pass. I'd failed exams in the past, but these were topics I didn't really care about. And I disappointed my advisor, and that really actually shook me more than I expected. And I kind of resolved never to disappoint him again.
So, roll back the clock a little bit more. The first time that you engaged with Fields medalists, you were 9. And in fact, your father flew you from Australia to Princeton to meet Charlie Pfefferman and Enrico Bombieri, both Fields medalists. Enrico was my postdoctoral mentor. And, well, I'm not sure you loved mathematics at 9, but you were kind of an international star. So my question is, at what point, at what age did you find a love for mathematics, a true calling?
Well, I always enjoyed sort of the formal game aspect of mathematics. So yeah, we've already said I like computer games, I like card games, board games, and any sort of system where there's a clear way to win and a clear way to lose. I always liked sort of very objective type of competition type. I competed in math competitions when I was younger.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah, it was only pretty much around grad school or afterwards that I actually started looking into how mathematics actually impacts the real world, and like how much fun it is to teach math or to communicate a math idea to a colleague. This I had no conception of when I was younger. I thought being a mathematician, there was some council of senior mathematicians that would just assign us problems to work on, like some giant homework assignment. That was my idea of what.
Oh, I'm so glad that's not true. Yeah.
No, it's so much better than that.
So there's a lot that we want to talk about, and I think most of the audience wants to hear a lot about what's happening in the world for AI, for math. But let's talk about a little bit about the math.
Okay.
So maybe 2 or 3 theorems. First, with Ben Green,
yes,
you proved a great theorem about primes being equally spaced. Tell us the story.
Right. So this is this was a long-standing problem. So the primes are very random-looking. If you know one prime, it's very hard to know where the next prime is. So the primes behave almost like they were plucked out of random, except they're not completely random. For example, almost all are odd, for instance. So there's this weird mix of what I call structure and randomness. But there is this principle that's been developed over 100 years. It originates in the area of Ramsey theory that says that complete disorder is impossible. So even within an extremely disordered set of numbers or whatever, there are always little patterns you can find. And so that's a remarkable insight.
But they're hard to prove that they're there.
Right. So so just from heuristics of randomness, we would predict that every so often primes would line up and create an arithmetic progression by random chance, and they should become longer and longer if you look more and more. But until our work, the longest arithmetic progression of primes that had been discovered, I think at length 23, and there was no longer progression known.
So just to be clear, that would mean like A is prime, and A plus B is prime, and A plus 2B is prime. Mm-hmm. And what did you prove?
Yeah, I proved that, Ben and I proved that you can find progressions like that of any length. So 357 is a progression of primes of length 3, and you can probably with pen and paper find one of length 4, length 5. Already length 6 is a bit tricky. But yeah, we could find them. We couldn't find a formula for where they were. But we found a way to count how many progressions of primes of a given length were in a very big range. And we could show through a lot of work that this bound was positive. And so.
Right, so for the audience, what's amazing about that is historically, it's easy to find an arithmetic progression of length 2 that is prime. That's just essentially that there's infinitely many primes. And it was a major theorem to show that there are 3-term arithmetic progressions. An ordinary human mathematician would try to prove length 4, length 5, or length 6, but Terry and Ben decided to just go to infinity.
Wow.
And that's kind of mind-blowing. Well, I'm going to hold it there because you're too modest. I'd like to move on.
Okay. All right.
In the air, you're also very well known for another theorem about primes. It's actually called the Maynard-Tao theorem, and it's been expanded, and it's related to this famous problem called the twin prime problem. And I'd like you to talk about that work, but also how that work turned out to change the social structure of doing mathematics.
Right. So one of my favorite problems, still unsolved, even with all the fancy AI and whatever, is the twin prime conjecture. That among the patterns that we expect the primes to have are pairs of primes which are only distance 2 apart, like 11 and 13. And we found millions of twin primes, but we don't know that they go on forever. They should. Everyone believes they should, but we cannot prove it. We can't even prove that, well, for many years we couldn't even prove that there were infinitely many pairs of primes that were not distance 2 apart, but some bounded distance apart. So there was this amazing breakthrough around 2014 when Yitang Zhang, who at the time I think was working in a Subway sandwich shop, managed to prove, he was a PhD in math, but he left academia for a while. He proved that there's infinitely many pairs of primes that differ not by 2, but by some number between 2 and 70 million. Right? So he proved a near miss to the twin prime conjecture, which was a great surprise, but it checked out. He was very careful. But his argument had all kinds of slight inefficiencies in it. This 70 million, people very, very quickly realized that you could improve it a little bit. So I think within 3 days of this preprint being announced, somebody posted a blog post, I can get the 70 million down to 65 million, and then somebody else did 54, and then people started posting papers to the archive preprint server, like with just tiny little improvements, racing to beat each other.
And remember, everyone's trying to get to 2, that there's infinitely many twin primes.
Yes. So actually, it was a little precursor of the kind of scramble we're seeing right now with AI. People are trying to race to push their AI buttons as fast as possible to get a certain result, which is getting a little unhealthy, actually. But to sort of counteract this, I proposed that we create a crowdsourced project, which is called a polymath project. I wasn't the first to do these things. Tim Gowers introduced the concept, but we sort of gathered all the people who were working on this, and we put them all to work on the same, in the same common space using my blog, actually. We worked together, dozens of people over several months, and we had a little leaderboard. You could see the bound. You could check it every day. It's kind of like a stock market, but it's always going down every day. Okay, the bound going down, and after about 6 months or something, it stabilized. We squeezed every single drop of juice out of every single argument. We got down to 246, which is still the world record.
And to be fair, this is a theorem that was proven over 10 years ago. Yeah, so it's really pretty remarkable. Theorem number 3, and then we'll move on to other topics, your pivot. There's a theorem of yours with Emmanuel Candes, a very distinguished statistician here at Stanford. He just won, I believe it's the Shaw Prize. And the odds are very high that maybe 10% of the audience has enjoyed the result of your theorem. So what does your work with Emmanuel have to do with hospital MRIs?
Yeah, this is maybe the one math thing I did that actually has direct practical application, and it's the algorithms that Emmanuel and I developed are now standard in modern MRI machines. Emmanuel and I, we knew each other from before, and in fact our kids went to the same preschool at the time. But we met at IPAM, the Institute for Pure and Applied Mathematics at UCLA, which was running a program on multi-scale geometric analysis. And he had come to me with this sort of puzzle that he and another collaborator, Justin Romberg, who's an electrical engineer, they were trying to improve the state-of-the-art in MRI image reconstruction. So you take an MRI scan, you get a certain amount of data, you want to reconstruct a high-quality image of the human body and try to, with good enough resolution that you can look for cysts or tumors or do some medical diagnosis.
And you don't want to be in the machine for an hour.
No, right, but yeah, so you need a high-resolution image, and the state-of-the-art was least squares approximation. This is the textbook way to reconstruct data from linear measurements, and it was pretty low quality. You had to sit in the machine for several minutes before you can get a high-resolution scan. So they're trying to see what you can do with less data and trying to improve least squares. So they were trying a computing method, which they had developed called total variation minimization. And the results were fantastic. They were getting incredibly sharp images, far sharper than the least squares.
And this area is called compressed sensing?
Yes, because, well...
okay, sorry to interrupt you.
Our explanation for it explained what was going on. Yeah, so, but when I first saw this, I thought that they had cheated somehow. Like it was almost like you're solving a crossword and you only have like 3 or 4 clues and you managed to complete the entire crossword just out of like a few letters.
Like Wordle.
Yeah. So I thought they must have made a mistake, and I was trying to prove actually a theorem that what they were doing was actually impossible. But in the course of doing so, I realized that there was a loophole, that there's a certain way to take measurements in which the method would work, and that was actually what happened. And so we explained this phenomenon, and so convincingly, in fact, that people like the manufacturers of big MRI machines, and also like people who do astronomical data collection, wireless broadband, many applications. There are many situations where if you have very few measurements, you can squeeze out a lot more high-resolution data than you might think. You can somehow, you can compress the amount of sensing you need to get your high image into a much smaller file. Kind of like how you can take a big image and compress it down to a small size while still
right. So what you imagine in JPEG or ZIP, but
right,
exactly. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I'm fascinated because there's so many students in the audience. Mm-hmm. A few weeks ago, the world of mathematics held its International Congress of Mathematicians, held every 4 years, and this is where you won the Fields Medal quite some time ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago.
20 years ago. But what's really interesting about this particular Congress, and there's several reasons, but I'll get to the AI in a moment, is this Congress was in the United States, first time after quite some period. I think the last one was at Berkeley in the 80s. And, well, one of the winners was Hong Wang. I think she's the 3rd woman to win a Fields Medal. It's a major result. But it's a major result that's close to you, right? Together with your former student, I think Jonathan Zoll, they solved the 3-dimensional Kakeya conjecture. And now that we're the age that we are, I want to ask, what is it like to have a student, and I think maybe even 2 students, play a role in Fields Medal theorems?
Yeah, it's like watching children grow up and sort of excel. Yeah, you have I'm very proud of many of my students. You know, they many of them have gone on to become accomplished mathematicians. Some are in industry. And now 2 have been involved in Fields Medal winning work. So,
and in particular on a problem that is dear to you in the case of Kakea.
yes, I myself worked on the Kakea problem for many, many years. And actually, with a co-author, Nets Katz, we wrote a roadmap. We couldn't solve the problem, but we wrote a dream. Like, if you could fill in these 3 or 4 holes in this argument, you could prove the Kakea conjecture. We released this roadmap 10, 15 years ago, hoping that someone would fill in the gaps. And for many years, it just remained out there until Hong and Josh picked it up and completed. It was not quite exactly the way we envisioned, but sort of 75% of.
But isn't it better that way?
Yeah. This is how math should advance. Everyone builds upon the work of the predecessors.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about the pivot.
Okay.
Right. And you were talking about this roadmap that you wrote with Nets, who is a character, by the way. He's a longtime professor at Caltech. So if you ever have the opportunity to meet him, I think he's now at Rice.
Yes.
But yeah, he's very colorful. But speaking of maps, I want to go back to about 25 years ago.
Okay.
You and I, we were both Packard Fellows.
Oh, yeah.
This is the foundation called David and Lucille Packard Foundation, and they're very good to science. This was before the Simons Foundation. And what the Packard Foundation does is they give out large grants to scientists across all of the fields, and every year they happen to include a mathematician. We were very fortunate, but we were the minority. And so 25 years ago, the foundation asked us to write a cheat sheet, like an atlas of mathematics, something like an atlas of the whole subject. Remember we were talking about that?
Yes,
it seemed like impossible. Do you still have that?
It's probably buried in some email chain somewhere. We should actually try to see if we can release it. I mean, it's...
Oh, it's be so embarrassing, but okay.
Yeah.
If you,
Yeah.
I'm very good at deleting my emails. Don't send me email. But if you find it, I love it.
Yeah.
But if we were asked to make this cheat sheet today, how would we do it?
With AI. It would be the short answer.
Right. So what took us weeks, and we were nervous about it, how would you try to make this atlas, this cheat sheet?
That's a good question. People have made, like, you can take the archive and you can see how which papers cite each other, and you can create these graphs, and there are some algorithms to kind of cluster these graphs, and you can kind of see that there's this, a continent of analysis and a continent algebra and some bridges. There are some experiments. Although it's really hard to see what is the definitive geography. I think every time you generate this, it's different. It would be a nice project. I mean, maybe if you get some artists involved, actually, it would be.
Maybe we should do that experiment and compare with what we actually did a long time ago. But in any event, but the answer is you would use AI, right? And why would you use AI?
So first of all, this is a project where exact accuracy is not 100% essential. Like, it's something which just kind of gives the right impression is good enough. You have to crunch through a lot of data. It's very, there's a lot of tedious things that can be automated. This, I think, is sort of the good use case for AI. Yeah.
Great. Well, so we're going to spend the next 20 minutes talking about AI.
Yeah.
So, and I do have a kind of a sequence of questions that I want to build up to. So let's go back to 2015. This is before AI.
Yes.
This is before AI. What did your day look like, and what made a good day for you?
Yeah, so my 2015...
Feel free to say, I already won the Fields Medal, so I'll win something else. But I mean, what made a good day in 2015?
Let's see. So, I think back then my time was kind of split 30, one-third between teaching, research, and administrative type duties. So yeah, I had my teaching. I'd meet with students, have office hours, and occasionally have to grade exams. I'd have a few meetings, but these are like prize committees or local, like hiring committees and things. So not so much media type things or fireside chats.
Well, there's no fire. I mean, but there's a word water bottle chat. But
but I did have more time for research, I would say, than I did now. I would try to block out some hours where I don't need to check my email and nothing is blowing up anywhere in the world.
So in the corner office at UCLA, you've got this gigantic board. There's probably something that says "Do not erase." Maybe there's a corner that has your schedule, here are your favorite problems, and you'd be standing like this, and you would fathom.
You'd be in my office, clearly. That's almost exactly what it looks like.
Yeah. So what does it look like today?
Well, I'm still in the same office, still got the same blackboards, but yeah, a lot of it is more at my computer, either talking to my agent, computer agent, to to manage some database or something, or do a calculation, or lots and lots of email chains, Zoom meetings. I still meet my students, I still teach, and occasionally I can squeeze out a bit of research, although often I found delegating to my junior colleagues to do a lot more of the actual work is.
So when did you first notice AI? For me, it was only a year ago. I was probably a skeptic until ChatGPT came out and could solve research level problems.
Right.
For you, you were ahead of me.
So I had at IPAM, so I was on the scientific advisory board of IPAM, and we were brainstorming for workshops. And this is around 2021, and there was beginning to be some advancements in machine-assisted mathematics. Some people were using giant sat solvers to prove theorems that required huge number crunching out of reach from previous attempts. People were beginning to use machine learning, neural networks. Peter Schulze had just formalized his big theorem, about
The tensor experiment.
the liquid tensor experiment about I'm blank condensed mathematics.
Yeah.
But so we proposed a workshop on all these topics, and so I led a team to well, I was one of the organizers of this workshop, which happened in 2023. And yes, where people were doing computer algebra and machine learning, and one talk on large language models. And I think I remember it was...
Were you a skeptic, by the way? You said you're a member of the board. Were you...
No, I was the one who was proposing this.
Okay,
I was, in fact, so enthusiastic about proposing this that I got assigned the task to organize it. I was hoping someone else would do it. But
Yeah, there's a skill in administration there that you have to learn.
I know that now. Okay. But yeah, so it was a very successful event. Yeah, so we had one talk about large language models, and they were just saying, oh, you know, it's just beginning to occasionally get somewhere on these high school early Math Olympiad type questions, and so
Which you could solve when you were 9.
Yeah, I mean, these were this was before this is like the ninth grade, like AMC type ones, but so it was interesting, and then almost immediately after our workshop, ChatGPT came out. So then
This is 2022.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So
seems like forever ago.
Yeah. No, the time scales are so different now.
So a year later, ChatGPT came out November 2022, and by 2023, you proclaimed, and I looked this up, you said that by 2026, these tools might be so trustworthy that they could be co-authors. And were you right?
Well, what I didn't realize is that I need to specify the month. The rate of progress this year alone has been rather dramatic. So like in January, this statement was still questionable.
Right.
Today, I think it is definitely the case.
Right. So as you know, I work for a company, and we've written 20 papers now, and it's I can't believe that I just said that. It's crazy. So what can AI systems do now, and what can't they do?
Yeah, so we don't fully know, actually. I mean, so much of AI progress has been driven by companies that are not disclosing all of the information, particularly negative results, which is such an important part of science, that you need to know what works and what doesn't work. So we don't have a completely clear picture of AI capabilities. But it does seem that there are certain classes of math problems which we thought were hard, and they're hard for humans, but are susceptible to a different style of problem solving, where if you have a mathematician who has access to every single technique that has been developed in the literature, and can try different combinations of them reasonably intelligently, and just hundreds and hundreds of combinations, they can solve problems which no human would have discovered, except by maybe a complete accident.
Yeah.
So it's not all problems that can do this, but there are thousands and thousands of open problems in mathematics that are out there, and
more than thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can spend all day coming up with open.
Yeah, thousands, tens of thousands.
Yeah.
We don't know what the success rate of these AI tools are, but let's say 10%. This is a number I'm just pulling out. If modern AIs can already solve 10% of these problems, that's hundreds at least of problems, and that's already explaining a lot of the current activity.
Right, and I do think we're there. So I want to follow up a little bit more on what I think we all agree. We don't really know what the capabilities of AI are now, and certainly in the future. And that, I don't know if we have time to get into this, but there's issues about AI safety, and Jacob Zimmerman, who won the Fields Medal a few weeks ago, famously announced when he won the Fields Medal that he was going to use his mathematical skills to work on AI safety. But I want to stick to the math here. You've said that at the present time, working on math problems using AI is something like this. These problems are like distance places you hike to, but the AI is the helicopter that drops you off at the solution. There will be those in the audience that say, isn't that great? And then there are those of us who are traditional mathematicians who believe in the beauty and the art and the nobility of the profession who aren't quite so sure. What do you have to say for both types of people, both views?
Yeah, so I think the mathematical community needs to do a better job of explaining what it is that we do. So as I said, when I was a kid, I did have this vague idea that mathematics, there was some council of mathematicians handing out problems for us to solve. And I think that there is still this impression that these problems are just out there, like kind of jewels or Easter eggs or something. Like the whole thing is like sort of giant Easter egg hunt, and it's not. That's not exactly true. I mean, we do have these goals, but mathematics is more like we're exploring a terrain. We're trying to map out a landscape where we don't really know the geography at all, but we can see some landmarks. There's some mountain here and there's some waterfall here, and if we can get there, we'll get a good view. And so we've been prioritizing sort of how to slowly building paths to get to these destinations and making maps and sharing our progress, and that's the valuable part. But the actual getting on the mountaintop is just kind of a milestone.
Yeah, and actually sometimes what seems to be a mountain turns out to be quite close, just on the other side of a bridge. Right. We don't know everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And would you characterize some of these news-breaking world, advances more along those lines?
Yeah. So there's it turns out that our landscape has a lot of shortcuts that we're not aware of. And so that's actually a good thing. I mean, it is giving us a clearer view of the landscape of mathematics, which we could only explore before through human intellect, but now we have this other, so almost orthogonal way of exploring the landscape. And so in time, this will give us a much richer view of what mathematics is, but it's creating this sort of short-term weirdness where all these problems that were supposed to be hard are actually really easy to AI, which does give the illusion that AI is superhuman. But it's orthogonal is maybe the better description. So this is the last question I want to ask about the ICM, and I want to move on to talk about the future. At the ICM, you gave an important address. Actually, probably gave multiple addresses, but the one I'm talking about is the current state of mathematics. And I think you were making a plea to mathematicians, policymakers, those who run the governing bodies of mathematics to think deeply about this moment. And I don't actually have what you wrote directly in front of me, but it's something along the lines that the community is in crisis, and that crisis is a question of both values and practices. And I don't want you to repeat that speech, but advice. If you were, and you are in a position, the world is listening, what advice do you offer here for the leaders of the mathematical community for now? Because it's very easy to say someone must do something and then have nothing happen. And there's no shortage of movements that somehow fizzle out. Right. Well, crisis is also opportunity.
You sound like a businessman when you say that. Yeah.
But I think for over a century, mathematics has been pretty stable. That we have this sort of consensus that there are certain things we want to do in mathematics, like solve problems, build theories, and build a community, and they've been kind of all aligned. And so we've been able to progress on all of our goals simultaneously. But there's now suddenly a divergence where AI can achieve some of our goals, but at the expense of others. And so we have to actually become very, very explicit about what it is that we want to do and what is the purpose of mathematics. We haven't really had to debate this in the past because there wasn't this external force pushing math in certain directions. But now there is. So we have to actually debate not just technical things, how to prove our theorems, and that's most of what mathematicians do when they talk to other mathematicians or to the public, but actually the underlying values. And I think we will be better for it. We had 100 years ago, we also had a crisis in mathematics in the foundations of mathematics. The axioms of math that we used were inconsistent.
Right.
But we fixed it, and it became stronger. I think the same will happen here.
So here's a statement. Would you agree that the doing of mathematics is genuinely a human endeavor that can be amplified with AI, or would you characterize it some other way?
Oh, I think so. I think a large part of what the purpose of mathematics is to help humans understand the world better. I personally find, because of my mathematical experience, the world is just a less scary place.
Yeah.
We have all these wonderful technologies that we don't understand. Like why do cell phones let us talk to people, on the other end of the world? Why does the internet work? Why does anything work? Why do AIs work? You can explain all that with mathematics.
Right.
And to me, that's actually very, very comforting.
So for the audience, while we were waiting for this session to start, I can say that Terry had his laptop open, typing away on something or another, and I asked, so Terry, are you doing math? He goes, yeah. I just had my agent, my LLM, return a 19-page proof of, can I say?
Go ahead.
Something called Sendoff's conjecture, but I don't remember what it was, it's new to me. But he was so excited. And so if you were wondering and you were a student, here's a world-famous mathematician, empowered and excited to do mathematics, even up to the minute before he has to walk on stage. So what that represents to me is a paradigm shift, right? What would have been maybe Terry sitting outside, just off stage with a yellow pad scribbling notes, and I still know you scribble notes, but it's a laptop open, and I don't really want to talk about myself, but I do math the same way. And if anyone's wondering what is in it, I think for both of us, it is an exciting time. I think we see certainly the promise of AI, but we also need to recognize the unease that the whole world feels. And I want to turn to the unease. A current PhD student maybe started graduate school in 2022 expecting a stable profession. And we would have told them, read these papers, write a few papers, maybe apply for an NSF postdoc, maybe go get a postdoc, and there's a recipe. And, I think the world has shifted underneath them. And that's more than the elephant in the room, that's the elephant in the world. We all have to really rethink what the future of work, what the future of science, so on and so forth will be. But let's take on what we know something about, the world of mathematics. What advice do you give to that student who is worried about his or her future?
Right.
If you want a hard question.
Yes,
Yeah.
so it is, we live in an era of change and great unpredictability. And unfortunately, it means that people's futures are not completely under their control. What happens externally to the economy, to the funding environment, to AI capabilities, so you can make all the best decisions and still not end up with the outcome that you hoped for. But it's still important to make the right decisions. I think a graduate program in mathematics still conveys a lot of value, but the traditional signifiers of value, like getting a thesis, getting a nice research paper, it is possible, they can be so superficially duplicated now. We are almost at the point where an AI can generate something that looks like a PhD thesis, and it will be hard to distinguish that from what a graduate student spends 4 years making. But the purpose of a PhD is not to produce this thesis. It's to train a student to have a lot of valuable skills, the ability to absorb complicated materials, to synthesize, to ask questions. There's a lot of unspoken valuable outcomes of education that we've not emphasized as much because we had all these tangible tokens. But I think if we make that more, highlight that and say, we are producing someone who is not just prompting and pushing buttons and producing these papers, but can actually, think.
Right.
I think that will actually be a valuable resource.
Right. So turning to thinking, you are a strong proponent of an area of AI and math called formalization and verification. And I can tell you that there's this program called Lean, and you use it. All the folks in AI for Math are using it, but that's a small community. There is a dramatic shortage for people who are excellent, skilled at this software. Can you tell us about what formalization and verification means? And then maybe we'll segue into how that could impact what we think about education overall.
Right. So mathematics officially has all these rules of logic. You're supposed to only do things in a certain way. But in practice, we cheat a little bit and we write informal proofs that say clearly this is true. We don't always give complete details, and occasionally we
wave hands, just like you're waving your hands.
Yes, and occasionally you make mistakes, and there's a very human way to argue, and it makes sense that we cut corners a little bit. But we have in recent years, we have worked out how to get to design computer languages that do check mathematical arguments, completely correctly, as long as you write them in a very strict format.
And it's hard to learn, right? The computer makes you accountable.
The first few times you learn Lean, it's like having an extremely fussy teacher looking over your shoulder, and you make one little mistake, and it'll say, "No, this is not correct. Red lines everywhere, and you got to fix it." But you do learn. Actually, it's actually a very good experience to actually fight your way through that, and you get a big dopamine hit, by the way, when your proof actually compiles.
And so let's turn to the education, because when I first learned about Lean, my reaction was, I know the theorems. Why are all these mathematicians formalizing like elementary undergraduate mathematics? Shouldn't they be training their students to prove brand new theorems? Obviously, my opinion has changed, largely because of what you described. So based on what you've learned in this process, let's extrapolate to the educators in the room. What would be your advice with regard to rethinking education? And the door is open, K through 14.
Yeah. There's so much potential and so much danger. We had a whole talk and panel about this yesterday. There are lots of experiments trying to teach students at various levels to work with some sort of formal language like Lean. There are ways to make it more look like a computer game, for instance. And I think it does teach certain ways of thinking that actually students actually enjoy. And they keep the AIs honest. If you unleash AIs in any sphere, whether it's education or business or science or something, they can make so many mistakes. The error rate has gone down, but it's still not zero. And so there's really a limit as to how much you can trust them. But coupling these AIs with formal verification may keep them completely honest and actually useful.
So this reminds me of a conversation I had yesterday with one of the associate deans of science here, Serena Rao. She's also running the program. And she said something really interesting to me. On the one hand, it made me feel very old, but on the other hand, it was really quite thought-provoking. Here at Stanford, they have initiated a program where students, the juniors, partner with the professors, the seniors, because the juniors are so well equipped to understand AI tools, but they don't have the curriculum available to them. And they're seeing early results where these partnerships. I was thinking about it, like when I tried to teach my mom how to use a cell phone, how frustrating that was. But now she texts all the time, and I kind of wish I didn't. But what other ideas could you think of that will help us harness AI tools for a community of educators that don't know where to start?
That is a great experiment. I think old hierarchies may dissolve in the future. So traditionally, a research project would have like some senior principal investigator, and then maybe some postdocs and some graduate students and some undergraduates. And the undergraduates are doing all these menial things, washing bottles or whatever. Okay, and but sort of the high level direction of the project is left to the senior people. So we've had sort of very hierarchical models of science and education too, like where you have teachers and teaching assistants, sort of similar roles. And it is, you can now, AI does open up a lot of fluidity. You could have projects, I mean, for example, I've seen schools, people can make little movies and they can storyboard an idea and get AI to fill in all the gaps and things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought of that because my boss is 25, and it's hard to imagine that that could have ever been reality. So I know that we want to save a couple minutes for questions from the audience. There's not much, I apologize for that, but there's one question I have to end with. 25 years ago, we tried to draw a map on a few pages, and a mathematics student today will spend their career somewhere on a map that neither of us could have imagined. How do you react to that?
Well, I think it's very exciting, actually. Math is endless, and I think there's all kinds of new territory that math, humans and AIs together can explore that we just had no ability to do in the past. So
thank you. So we have a couple minutes. I'd like to take a couple. I know there's not a lot of time left. You, sir, with the awesome shirt.
Oh, thank you.
I'd like to trade.
Hi, I'm Max. I'm going into 10th grade. It's such an honor to meet you, by the way. I'm a fellow gamer. I had a question about a specific mathematical theorem I heard about. You're familiar with the Collett's conjecture, the 3x plus 1? I read a bit about your work in the field. It's amazing, by the way. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think it'll ever be solved?
It is a notorious conjecture. People have lost many, many hours and even some friends because of this conjecture. I see no path to solving this conjecture right now. I mean, it requires like very long-term understanding of dynamical systems. This is something where no current technique touches at all.
We'll keep it short. It's a hard, beautiful problem. Let us know.
Okay.
But I love your shirt. Yes.
Hello, I'm Leo. I'm a rising sophomore from a local high school, and I'm really inspired by this fireside chat. So my question to Professor Tao is, like, when you're working on proving a very difficult conjecture, how do you decide if the conjecture itself, it might just be false, or if it is true, and we just haven't pushed hard enough or explored the right approach to solve the problem?
Yeah, well, you have to play with it, and sometimes your gut feeling is wrong. I mean, there was a conjecture once I worked on trying to prove for 5 years, and then someone asked me, have you ever tried to disprove it? And it never occurred to me.
The Jacobian conjecture.
The many recent examples, yes. Sometimes you have to readjust your thinking. So having lots of people work on the same problem helps, or slightly different mindsets.
Can I add to that? I know you're the star, but I love that question. Thank you very much for asking that question.
Thank you.
So what's interesting about that question is you shouldn't take for granted a famous problem just because it is famous. I think every successful person, whether it's a mathematician or a scientist, has to give themselves permission to do something hard. And that includes questioning whether the conjecture, in this case, is true or false. And that is empowering. The first time as a student, I tried something without direction from an advisor was so liberating. Would you say the same thing?
Oh yeah. You need the freedom to fail. And do something slightly embarrassing. It can be a great learning experience.
So time is very short, so let's go quickly. Rapid round.
Yeah. Hi, I'm an undergraduate student in UC Berkeley, and thanks you for the wonderful discussion. And my question is, Professor Tao, an OpenAI model recently disproved Adler's long-standing conjecture on the planar unit distance problem, and you later wrote an exposition digesting the construction. If AI can now generate novel mathematical proofs, so what skills should young mathematicians develop to turn AI-generated solutions into deeper mathematical understanding and into the next important questions?
Yeah, we have to focus a lot more now, not just on creating proofs, which used to be the hard part. This has now become the automated part, but understanding the proofs, explaining them to other people, and seeing the similarities between different arguments in the literature. This should become the more important skill.
So our time is up, but if you, and I apologize for those who wanted to ask questions, maybe we'll take just 2 super quick ones. You there, back there? Yeah.
Me?
No, well, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Professor
Very
Tao.
quick, yeah.
It's very, it takes a lot of courage to come up and speak. And on a personal note, what do you enjoy outside of mathematics in life?
More and more, I enjoy free time and not having responsibilities. I look forward to that day.
And you, sir, back there, this will be the last one.
Hi,
I
Terence.
apologize.
I'm a third-year bioscience student in UCI and startup founder on AI for Science and brain-machine interface. I hated math before as an Asian kid, in different type of, from you, yeah. But recently fell in love in topology as a tool to interpret the consciousness and neural activity. So I noticed your interpretation of Poincale's hypothesis using algebraic approach. So I think it should be also an important rule to understand topology using the algebraic tools. So which way do you recommend me to start learning in algebraic stuff?
I don't think I can give
understand that.
I don't think I can give a short answer to that
Yeah,
question.
that's kind of,
yeah.
That may be kind of
Yeah,
too
yeah.
long, so
yeah. Well, I don't know. I think we should give Terry a gigantic round of applause.
Okay.